Plans have been announced to overhaul the way people apply for asylum in the EU. The mass influx of refugees has put a strain on countries like Greece and Italy, which are on the front line of the crisis. Under the current scheme, refugees must apply in the first EU country that they land in. Well, now the European Commission wants to scrap the so-called Dublin regulation and introduce the mandatory redistribution of asylum seekers. The alternative option would be to preserve the Dublin Accord's first country of entry principle, but it would add a so-called corrective fairness mechanism. The new rules still need to be agreed, though, on by EU member states. Frans Timmermans is the first vice president for the European Commission. He says the current system has failed everyone involved.
We need to reform our common European asylum system. The current crisis has shown the present system is not working. The problem we need to fix is that the system relies largely on where a person first arrives at the EU to decide which member state should handle an asylum claim. This is neither fair nor sustainable, given the reality of the volumes of people, which has put a huge burden on just a very few number of member states.
The Greek authorities are already struggling to cope with thousands of asylum claims. Let's speak to Nathalie Savaricas, who is in Athens for us. Nathalie, EU trying to remove the burden from the first reception countries like Greece, something Greece will welcome, won't they?
Absolutely, it's definitely a step in the right direction, but as many European procedures is taking a long time. This is an emergency, of the refugee emergency that has started last summer. We're now in April. We're still negotiating how to move forward. And meanwhile, there are tens of thousands of refugees stranded here. The other important, point made is addressing the humanitarian aspect of this, because the EU has long been focusing on security, beefing up border defenses, etc. And very little has gone into the humanitarian aspect, which has really been left to the NGOs here and the Greek authorities, who are also battling a huge financial crisis. So I think it will be welcomed not only by Greece, but also the NGOs here. But of course, big question marks on when this will actually start being implemented, because of the friction that we all know that has happened and is taking place between European Union states on how to deal with this problem comprehensively and in unison.
Well, Nathalie, what is the current situation facing refugees in Greece?
Well, listen, what we have at the moment is two categories, if I may use that term, of refugees. We have the ones who arrived in Greece prior to March 20th and prior to the European Union and Turkish deal that was seeking to remove incentives from refugees to make it to the Greek shores. Now, the ones arriving before are simply stranded here. There are over 50,000 of them, half Syrians who want to relocate and meet their families in various European countries, but the borders are shut for them, and we're still waiting for their relocation. There are up to 60,000 relocations that should take place under the European Union, rules, but only not even 600 have taken place, and that's just for Greece. Now, further on, there are the others, the Afghans, for example, which are the second, highest number of nationals seeking asylum in Greece. Well, they're just stranded there, and they have two options: either to seek asylum here or go back to Turkey. I saw one Afghan family. They just don't want to go. They just want to stay here or move on to Europe. Now, there are other categories, all those who arrived after the 20th of March. They're all in detention centers in islands in Greece. They also have two options, essentially, either to apply here for, asylum, or go back to Turkey, and either, if they're Syrian, get into the European Union program of relocation across the continent, or just stay there. And that's really the predicament. Of course, there's also all the Afghans and other asylum seekers. Well, they're facing all sorts of problems, because we're hearing from the UNHCR, for example, that 13 asylum applications were forgotten to be looked at from the Greek authorities. So it's really a mess.
Okay, Nathalie, it does sound like that. Nathalie Savaricas joining us there from Athens.